Okay, welcome everybody to the session on the future of publishing and open access. It's a great pleasure to introduce the panelists, but I will just do it in a different way than usual. I will ask the panelists to introduce themselves very quickly. And to make things easier, which is complicated with so many pictures here on the screen, I will start in an do it in an alphabetic order. So that means Thierry, could you please start?
Is it me? I have a small problem. Okay, so if it's me, I'm Thierry Bouche from the University of Grenoble in France. I am currently the chair of the EMS the EMS Committee on Publication and Electronic Dissemination. And I've been involved in many projects as long as I was the director of the MadDoc cell, also in Grenoble. We made the NUMDAM, UDML, and we launched recently Center Mersenne, which is a diamond open access publishing venue, mainly for math journals, but not only.
Thank you. Next one would be André Gaul.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is André Gaul. I'm the managing director of EMS Press, the publishing house of the European Mathematical Society. And I started basically 2 years ago and transformed the publishing house from Zurich to Berlin and into open access direction.
Okay, thank you. Timothy Gowers.
Hello, Timothy Gouws. I'm a professor at the Collège de France and also a fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge. I was a founding editor and I'm currently the managing editor of Discrete Analysis, which is an archive overlay journal. So the papers live on the archive, but are linked to from our website. That's Diamond Open Access. In other words, there are no author charges, and we have a small grant that finances it, and maybe I can talk more about that later.
Yeah. Then Karl Zulik.
Hello, my name is Karl Zulik. I'm professor of mathematics at Leibniz University in Hanover. My field of research is algebraic geometry. The reason why I'm here on this panel is that I've been editor-in-chief of ZB Math since 2016, and ZB Math is now called ZB Math Open because we went open access on the 1st of January of this year. So that's a contribution to open access from our side. Thank you.
Yeah, the next one would be Tomo Pisanski. Tomo,
you may call me a counterexample because I'm coming from a very small country of 2 million people, from Slovenia. And I'm also editor of small journals that are published by very small, publishing house or whatever. And I would say it's not typical because our journal are open access journal, and my idea is to tell you how we went to this and what we would like to have for such small countries to or small publishers how to survive.
Giovanni.
Hello, everyone. I'm Giovanni Ren. I'm senior publisher for the mathematics portfolio in Elsevier. Been working now in this position for the past 4 years, and thanks for having me today. It's going to be a great occasion for dialogue.
Yeah, and the last but not least, on a train.
Thank you. I'm Olaf Tschopp. I'm also from ZB Math, basically the managing editor now for 13 years, and now ZB Math Open, as Karl Zulik explained. And as another role, I have also the vice chair of the committee Thierry is chairing, so publication and electronic dissemination committee of the EU in creating and maintaining open access services like UDML or LLM, and of course nowadays, fortunately, also including CBMAS. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. I've prepared 3 questions that I think would be great to discuss. And maybe we can do it in a similar way. So the 3 questions that I suggest, but it should not be exclusively the questions, should be: what is the future of publishing, and in parentheses, open access publishing? How will it go? The options and the good side, and the challenges as well as the risks that you see, and the way to assure the quality of publications. And maybe we can go in the same order as we did before, so that makes it a little bit easier. Thierry, you want to start?
Well, I don't want, but since that's what I'm supposed to do, it's easier to come, not to come first. But anyway. So, well, difficult question. For the future, I'm not really able to pretend I know what is going to happen. I would only say that it seems to me that open access is more or less something that will happen and take momentum, and we can't face it. I mean, maybe also for bad reasons. I mean, this is because mostly a lot of research is funded, and funders tend to like open access currently. They have been convinced that it's a good return on investment for research. So I think we will go for more, probably only, well, I don't know exactly, but we can expect that we tend to general open access as there are forces going in this direction. And also people like simple systems, and if you have to manage to pay APCs to pay for big deals, for transformative big deals, for small deals, it's too complex, I think. So, well, we'll see what others think about it. I wanted to say that personally, I like very much, there has been an internal what was called the ICSU and now is called the International Science Council, International Science Council, which has made a very sound study on what should be, on publishing and open science. And I think it's a very good place to start about what we would expect from well done scientific publication system. So, well, I don't know, maybe later on I can show you what they say. And for the next questions, well, it's difficult. Maybe, well, from our committee's perspective, it's obvious that generally mathematicians are in favor of open access. Apart from other trolls, they think everything should be open access. And I think maybe this will not be the main focus of this discussion today, but for instance, digital library should be open access. I mean, we should have a perpetual easy access to everything that has been published in math and which is of a certain quality and which is trustable, checked, let's say, not every piece claiming to be mathematics has to be published and easily accessible, and that's one of the issues. So, well, and mathematicians don't like to pay for open access, and I agree with them. So we tend to favor diamond open access, which means, well, which is one of the ways to say gold open access without APCs. And well, so when you put that equation into the system, it's very difficult because nobody pays, readers don't pay, authors don't pay, so you have to find a way to recover costs. And I think, well, this is one of the big challenges here. And well, maybe I prefer to go on after the other ones have spoken a little bit because I'm getting out of fuel.
Andre?
Yes, so I can briefly explain the position of EMS Press, the European Mathematical Society, and its publishing house, where the position is quite clear. So open access is a must for us, and paywalls must vanish. The question is how. And we have seen recently, in the recent years, that author fees, so-called APCs, have basically moved the paywall from the reading side just to the publishing side. And this poses a huge threat to the scientific community, since researchers are now excluded from publishing. So, and the severity of this depends really on the funding in specific regions or disciplines. And I have to say this also applies to transformative agreements like DEAL, which we have here in Germany, which are only patchwork solutions for a country. And so we think that publishers need to find business models that really serve the entire community and are sustainable at the same time, which is a challenge, of course. Our option for EMS Press is called Subscribe to Open, which can be explained very easily. It's simply that libraries subscribe to the content that they need for, let's say, the next year, and the publisher then commits to publish a journal as open access during that subscription year, if the subscriptions allow for sustainable publishing. So we can discuss what this really means a bit later on, but briefly explained, if there are enough subscriptions, then it's going open access. There are, of course, some risks attached to this, and the first risk is the so-called free rider problem. So someone might say, why should I subscribe if the content is going to be open access? And the answer is pretty simple. It's actually the other way around. It's going to be open access if they subscribe. Otherwise, it's going to be flipped back to a non-open access mode. And that's something that we, of course, that we don't want. So that's the second risk. And we as EMS Press, our job is to make this transition smooth and to also build up a reputation of a full open access publisher that way. And the key here is really that researchers and librarians need to understand the model properly. So I'm really thankful for getting the opportunity to speak here. There was a question about the quality assurance of publications, and that's usually not so much of a concern with Subscribe to Open, because it doesn't really change the business here. So the editorial boards act independently of the publisher, as it should be, and there are no incentives for the publishers to sacrifice the quality by just accepting more. And we're also not excluding any high quality publications just because the authors can't afford the funding, which is the case with APC sometimes. So yeah, that's it from me, and we can of course discuss this a bit more in detail later.
Timothy?
Yeah, my starting point here is particularly when the phrase open access triggers me slightly, because I feel that archive has changed everything, and that we've got all the open access we need, basically. Everybody puts everything on the archive. And of course, that's not necessarily the final version in the journals, but I think it tends to be good enough. And if there's a serious problem with the archive version that comes to light, then usually somebody will put an update. So I do almost all my reading on the archive. That's not true for historical papers, obviously, but some of those have been made available, for example, by Elsevier, which is one thing that I think is very good. Papers over 4 years old, I think. So that sort of leaves the question, what is the role for journals at all? I'm sorry to ask that in front of so many people who publish, but all I can say is that I am one of you. So I think I've earned the right to say that. So the obvious one is dissemination, but that is no longer, in my view, necessary because of archive. You still have maybe some function with certifying correctness, but that I'm also a little bit skeptical. I feel that that's not really what happens with journals. I think papers get published in journals that are incorrect, and mistakes get discovered. If the paper is interesting enough, mistakes tend to get discovered, I think, before the publication stage, although it does sometimes happen that referees pick up mistakes. And then the other function of journals, this is what I would regard as the main function of a journal such as discrete analysis, which is just an archive overlay journal, is providing some sort of stamp of quality. And just, you know, this article was good enough to appear in this journal and not that journal and that sort of thing. And I can't help feeling that if we were to start all over again with the internet, then the system that we devised would not be the system that we have now and would not be even particularly similar to that system. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think it's no mystery that mathematicians are unwilling to pay APCs against that background, again, because they will say, well, why should I pay an APC to let other mathematicians read the journal version when they're probably not going to read the journal version anyway? They'll still look at the archive version. So where does that leave the future of publishing? I mean, there are all sorts of problems and challenges. So one potential way of doing things would be to have more academic-led small journals like discrete analysis and other ones of a similar kind, sort of small diamond things. And then that leaves the problem, as Thierry Bouche has already mentioned, of how these should be funded. And so discrete analysis has got some funding from a library in Cambridge. I'm involved in one or two other journals like that. There's Advances in Combinatorics, that's got funding from a library in the US. So that is possible, but it's not completely clear. So one of the challenges is, can that model be scaled up? So discrete analysis at the moment has been publishing about 20 papers a year, which is very, very small by the standards of most journals. It's starting to increase, and it's starting to feel just a little bit difficult, and as though we haven't quite got to the point where we need administrative support, but if that happens, it will cost money, and then it'll be much more challenging to fund. So I think that's one of the challenges. Another challenge I think we face as mathematicians is that our needs are really very different from the needs of people in other subjects. So what I've just said about archive, you could not say about biology, for example, although the bioarchive does exist, it's not as established as archive is. And so I feel that in an ideal world, I would like to see mathematics publishing decoupled from publishing in other areas. So when you have big transformative deals, they would exclude mathematics, and mathematics would come up with its own arrangements. But getting that to happen would be another big challenge. I think in principle, the funding challenge should be one that can be solved simply because conventional publishing is very expensive. So there's a problem of collective action, but if the collective action can be organized, then it should work out cheaper for everybody. But organizing collective action is a problem itself, so that's another challenge. So I'll stop there, but can expand on any of these points later on.
Klaus.
Okay. I think open access has come, and I think it will stay, and it will be successful in the end. One point I would like to make, though, is I think we have a tendency to view that very much from a European point of view. Governments in Europe, European Union, many governments of European countries indeed want open access publishing because they say publicly funded research should be publicly available. This is not exactly the same discussion we are seeing in the US or in Asia. So this sort of very strong tendency or almost pressure towards open access, I think, is a European phenomenon which is not there to the same extent in other parts of the world. Still, I think in the end, it will probably be the model which will take over. Talking about challenges, risks, and opportunities. Of course, and I think others have already said that, sustainability is an issue. It's an issue in more than one way. I mean, there is the creation of new journals, the flipping of journals, and it's often done by enthusiastic people. They put a lot of effort into it, but it also depends very much on individuals or small groups. And these individuals may retire, they may lose interest. So it's not clear just how easy it is to keep that up over a longer period of time. Funding also, we've heard about subscribe to open access. Yes, I think it's working at the moment, also because of the enthusiasm and the pressure for open access, which we see. At the same time, one could imagine a situation where there's enormous pressure on the budgets of libraries, departments, universities, and then that funding might go again. So yes, there is a risk. Opportunities. I think it is worth thinking about more than just publication in the traditional sense. If we have open access, we have open publications, we should also think about other material, be that video, slides, and there's the whole world of open data and research data. So I think it is worth thinking about open access publication in this broader context. Maybe we'll come back to that at a later stage of that discussion. Your third question was about quality of publications. I think that is not necessarily strongly or strictly related to open access. Yes, it is sometimes perceived to be so. I've heard that argument against open access. It's all this trash there is out there, all this rubbish, these predatory journals. I think, however, there's another reason for it. It's the tremendous pressure on individuals and on institutions to produce publications, to be cited, to do well in rankings. And I think that is and also a pressure which allows referees maybe to spend less time on the refereeing jobs. I think that is a problem, but I think it is not not in a fundamental way linked to open access. I think that's all I want to say at that stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tomo?
May I share a screen, please?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to say a little bit, I'll be brief. In 2008, we launched a journal called Ars Mathematica Contemporanea, and it has been diamond open access since beginning, because we knew that if we want to start with a journal, we can't charge readers, we can't charge authors. However, we did also start with the printed version, which was quite expensive, and it was used to we use it to collect money from libraries, from our colleagues who had grants and who could afford to buy, printed version, not to read it, but just to give money to us in a legal way. Okay, then in 2016, we established another journal, Slovenian Discrete and Applied Mathematics Society journal, which is online only. Sorry, that's a society. We established it, which is co-publisher of both journals. And then 2 years later, we launched the Art of Discrete and Applied Mathematics. That's purely electronic journal. And again, diamond open access. The difference between the two journals is one, we want to have it larger articles, and the other one we also have specialized smaller notes in it. So we achieved that the first journal was covered by Matzainet quite early, Centralblatt also, and then Web of Science finally. So it's doing pretty well. And the other one, we are still waiting to be covered by the Web of Science, but it's also doing okay. Now, the society, as I say, it's a co-publisher for both journals. And in 2020, it has been recognized by the Slovenian, let's say, authorities, by non-government organization, the public interest. This means that we can apply for covering the membership fee at EMS. We can apply for pertinent travel costs of its officials, and every taxpayer in Slovenia can dedicate up to 1% of their taxes to this society. So this is the way that we get public money to, let's say, a non-government organization. How are we financing the two journals? Initially, it was mainly through research projects, while this was still legal. Now it's illegal. So we have to adapt all the time. We can't use one model. We have to move from one model to another model to survive. Currently, it's the University of Primorska that has a main share, and the other one is our society, our small society. Our small society maybe pays printing costs for one edition of AMC or something like that. And of course, the whole thing relies on the dedicated work of many volunteers, editors. We have a large editorial board so that we can not every editor has a lot of work, because we are getting a lot of papers. About 80% of papers we just throw into a garbage bin because they're not really serious. About, let's say, 20-25% they go to refereeing process. And recently, because of our coverage by these databases, there are calls by the Slovenian Research Agency for publications. And we are applying every year, and we get some money from the Slovenian Research Agency that helps us, survive. So, how to improve the financial situation? Well, we would like to. One way of improving is to have, by attracting top mathematicians as authors and editors. If we don't get enough, good papers, then we won't be able to survive, or it will be very difficult. At the beginning, for instance, Branko Grimbaum was one of the editors, and his name already helped us a lot. He also published things in our journal, so that was a big thing. Then another thing that we saw with Plan S and other things is our agency suddenly said, if you publish we will give you some special money if you publish in journals that are not open access and require, but you have to thank our agency for that. So what we are thinking is, maybe if we can use the same approach. So if there are agencies throughout Europe, in the world, that are willing to finance authors publishing in our journals, we'll gladly take their money. I mean, this is quite fair. The other thing that we would like to propose is we would like to enter a consortium of a similar non-profit publishers that would vouch for quality of their publications, because the danger with such small publishers is, there may be some, because you have tons of them that are really no good, and we don't want to be part of them. We want to be a serious publisher who publishes serious, mathematics. Finally, we noticed that there are certain prejudice against publishers from non-Western countries, such as EU13, including Slovenia. So I think that the renowned mathematical institutions, societies, and libraries should endorse high-quality mathematical diamond open access journals, such as AMC and Adam. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Giovanni?
Yes. Okay, like these are three big questions to be resumed in 3 minutes, but I'm going to try to approach them like in the best way possible, because of course they encompass like very complex scenarios. So like future of open access. I mean, future of open access started some time ago. Timothy, Professor Gouws was of course mentioning Archive, and the community that launched Archive saw the future 20 years ago. So there is a request of new currencies in scientific dissemination. This is what we are here discussing today, I guess. So the questions are like impending, and of course, like they touch upon like what the other two questions: options, challenges, and risks, and of course the assuring quality. So the thing is that again, stealing another keyword that was pronounced by Thomas earlier, like I feel that this is really an opening up an age of counterexamples. We are experimenting with different kind of ways of managing to present open access options to authors who do ultimately need to keep their choice in deciding where and in which model they would like to publish. I think that this is key, of course, to leave this freedom to the authors. Elsevier approach like is based on this author choice, supporting open access, is creating open access spaces more and more, subscribing to Plan S, launching transformative journals, enhancing a number of transformative agreements, which is a very large number of, you might know. And also like try to apply the lessons that we have learned in this past decade in the dialogue that has been continuously going on with the mathematics community, which at the end of the day is really the one actor we need to, publishers need to respond to, and librarians too, although I believe together with André that there is a strong educational effort that publishers, both commercial like Elsevier or non-commercial like the EMS, like need to put in place in order to make sure that librarians, the community are educated as much as possible about their rights, about the possibilities that the different business models allow them, grant them in terms of like dissemination of their work, and also making sure, and this is the resources, and in terms of like assuring quality, answering this question, making sure that like we put resources that enable, you know, like workflows, help desks, and also help authors understanding what to do with the requests that are coming from funders, institutions, peers, and regardless of the open access model that they want to publish in. Researchers community that is actually giving, again, like I'm talking about learned lessons, the right directions to publishers. I mean, Elsevier's mission is to help researchers advance science, but I think that the question here should be like, how are researchers actually helping Elsevier in its mission? And this is actually something that I see very clearly in the dialogue that Elsevier is having and has had with the mathematics community. So Open Archive, of course, does not count as open access, is one help, is one action in support like of free readership. Of course, Professor Gouws, I call you Timothy, I'm sorry. Allow me this, thanks. Even though, unfortunately, I never met you in person, but we just go very colloquial here. So Timothy was mentioning Open Archive. Open Archive counts for, in 2020, around 34 million views of Elsevier content. So 34 million downloads in various forms that happen in Science Direct with Open Archive. This is not open access. It should not be confused. So like, also Elsevier should not pat itself on the shoulder because they launched Open Archive. It's just a service that allows like free readership. But in terms of open access, there will be forces, as Thierry was mentioning, they are leading in this direction. We launched 6 open access journals already in 2020. There are going to be another 6 coming in this year, because we believe that this is the direction it needs to go. Even though it's true that there are like resources like archive or like a lack of funding resources in mathematics. Mathematicians, unfortunately, are a poorer community compared to other communities in various sciences. We mentioned biology or biochemistry or even physics. There are more money there to be granted. But yes, I mean, options, I think in terms of options, there is a future of like different models we can experiment with. I'm actually curious to listen more about Subscribe to Open from Andre. And you know, like making sure that we are launching more open access with affordable APCs, more open access journals, and supporting also like those institutions. We're doing this with some Chinese institutions that are willing to pay and to sponsor Diamond open access journals. So like this is another model that Elsevier is supporting by like granting them, of course, presence on Science Direct and making sure that even authors collaborating with institutions for also author not to have to pay APCs if there is a Diamond open access model. So in short, author choice and variety of models, I think of models which are in an experimenting phase for all of them, I think is the future, and the quality is employing resources to help authors understanding the changes that are coming for them.
Thank you. Olaf?
Thank you. Can you hear me? So actually there's hopefully not so much to add because many aspects have already been mentioned. So addressing the first question, I would say I cannot say so much about the future of publishing actually, because it's very complex. I can at most, as we basically have all, address the future of mathematical publishing, which is, I think, quite a bit specific. And perhaps it's one of the big issues for us that we may maintain the big advantages that we have within the mathematical ecosystem and in the mathematical publishing ecosystem, independent of what pressure may come from the overall publication system. So what do I mean by this? First of all, regarding the first questions, I think that open access will indeed prevail both on the community side, because for our, but also for other communities, open access is more and more crucial, and but also from the commercial side, because basically publishing open access means also getting rid of middlemen. And well, I experienced also the situation of the subscription model, of the traditional subscription model for many years. Also Centralblatt, then CBMS was subscribed, and you notice that well, in the past was maybe still a function in the sense that there was a kind of demand built in. So a good publication, a good journal might be in higher demand, and it might be more attractive and more widespread, by the way. But that has nowadays basically not be relevant due to both due to bundling or by the situation that that selling subscriptions has been a completely different business, and it involves many strange negotiations between publishers who bundle things and states who have preferences which are not always. So if you negotiate with full states, they have preferences completely with that have nothing to do with the scientific value. So overall, I think there's a huge incentive for open access anyway, so it will likely prevail. And the question is, we should make it work for mathematics in a right way, because it was mentioned that open access comes also with different incentives, and we need to keep the great landscapes that we have in mathematics as a landscape with many great community journals which are well run and very effectively run and contribute a lot to quality assurance. Also within the new ecosystem, where not just the situation comes from bundling, but where we also the situation that there are incentives get generated by APCs, but also incentives just for the pressure of publishing to scale large, and that is definitely potentially a problem. So how could we address this? There have been ways mentioned. So we should avoid the curse of scalability, which is there, and enjoy the benefits of scalability, like for instance in the archive. But I have to also to mention that the archive, well, it's despite that there might be the impression that the archive covers everything, which is not the case. I mean, for mathematics from CB Math, well, I wrote several articles in the EMS newsletter, now magazine. So currently for all mathematics, we have about 15 to 20% of the articles at the archive. The overall open access share is larger due to
we have trouble to understand you, Olaf. So probably the connection is
okay. Then I will just stop and give it further. I think the main point is just to say we should avoid. So there will be open access, but there are threats to the traditional. Okay, sorry. So we should find good models to maintain the mathematical quality within our journals in a good ecosystem, and several options have been mentioned, like Diamond Open Access or Subscribe to Open. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this first round. Let me try to summarize. There's a lot of open. We're in a certain way in the Wild West, lots of different models, lots of different options that are taken. The difficulty with quality, I think, remains, because in archive or things like that, there's no quality control. And maybe 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I had a discussion with André Gaul, who claimed that you just give it to the internet and the internet will find out whether things are right or wrong. And that is probably not the case. But the sustainability of the information, that it is available in the future, is also a big problem. So with this, I would like to open the discussion in a certain way that everybody can raise his or her point directly. So any other points that have not been raised and that you would like to mention, please go ahead. And also the audience, which is pretty big, if they have questions, they should please raise the hand, and then we can include that in the discussion. So anybody of the panel who wants to further raise some points directly? Then I see a hand from Apostolos Damialis from the publishing house. You wanted to make a comment?
Yes, a quick comment. I didn't participate in the first 15 minutes of the discussion, so I missed some part probably. But there are two things I'd like to mention as sort of, let's say, food for thought. I don't know if this was touched upon though at the beginning. One would be the relevance of printing stuff along with open access and the cost that this carries. This has been probably discussed, but
yeah.
For the part I was in, it wasn't touched upon. So this is an important cost factor from the publishing perspective. It is also relevant in terms of sustainability for some, for others, online is enough. But I'd just like to mention this aspect, which wasn't discussed, or it was very briefly discussed by Tomo when he said how they were running their journal when they started. But I'd like my, let's say, most interesting part, and I'd like to think that way, would be, what about books in mathematics? So we mostly talk about open access in terms of shorter papers and journals and all that, which is fine. But I have to say that I like books a lot. And I feel that maybe moving the interest of an expanding mathematics world into collecting information more carefully and publishing them in books would somehow bifurcate the problem into two. So one could think of books that are either open access or not, and journal papers that are of more immediate importance, that they should be more strongly open access, or hopefully all of them should be. But I think these are the especially, and in fact, these two are related because books in our minds are always in print. I just wanted to raise those two issues. And as I said, it's mostly food for thought rather than a solution to the questions.
Thank you, Apostolos. Other comments? Klaus.
I don't have a comment to that directly. So if somebody else has, I would say that person goes ahead. I have another point I would at some point like to raise. But if there's a direct answer to this question, then I'd pass it on. Whoever can answer.
Just go ahead.
Andre, will you raise your hand as well? No. I think it's just like about books. I'm not going to mention that because like I feel it's a different kind of discussion. So like I'm just talking about like journals here. Usually what I think also in the journals that we're launching in open access, we're talking about like e-only journals. But the journal that we launch, we're still talking about what the future is going to look like. The problem with costs, I think that paper costs, distribution costs are very predictable and manageable compared to the increasing costs of managing an online journal. I mean, Timothy was mentioning about the journal, Discrete Mathematics, journal is editing, that even though there are few papers, these are increasing. And of course, there are increasing costs. So this, I think, is a challenge. And these costs are due to increase for several reasons that relate to updating formats, maintaining platforms, preservation, things that at EMS like you're faced with every day as well. So I don't think that also like when you scale them up, like paper costs can actually be controlled very well, but the costs of publishing online, it is a question mark that will remain also, like because they're due to increase.
Thank you. Then Klaus, you had a comment?
Yeah, there's one other issue, a point I would like to raise. I mean, we had this discussion this distinction between dissemination and publication in a journal. I mean, as it was said, dissemination happens through the archive. Whether the archive is as complete as we tend to think is maybe another question, but we can, for the moment, take it for granted, make the point, dissemination happens easily and happens through the archive. So that was the original reason for publishing papers. That has gone. We still have all the journals, and we still pay a lot of money for those. And I think the only reason for that is the process of quality control which happens. So one of that is, of course, checking the paper for correctness by referees. That's one thing that is important. But the other, and I think that's the crucial point, is that it's so tremendously important in which journal a paper appears. It's important for the individual, for the researcher, and it's important for the institution. So having papers in annals, invenciones, etc., that is, of course, the gold standard. And that's why we maintain the system. And this also is the reason why I think it's very, very difficult to change that. Yeah, we have the standards, we have the high-level journals, and of course, we all like to publish there if we can. The young people are forced to publish there. So if we want to change the landscape considerably, we would have to approach and discuss that topic. And I don't know how to solve it, because that seems to be a very sort of stable model, which seems very, very difficult to change. But if we wanted to save a lot of money, if we want to really change the transformation of the publication process, I think that would be a question which we have to address. But I must admit, I don't have an answer to that either.
Anybody has an answer to this? I may have a comment myself to this. The community has its rituals, and one of the reasons that we have these rituals is that we want to publish in these journals, and you said Invenciones and Acta or something like that, and other communities have other journals which are the top journals and which they consider and I think this is a little bit like an Italian will say, okay, yes, espresso, what's the difference to coffee? We'll stop drinking espresso. And as a consequence, I don't think this culture is easy to change. I agree with you that it's very difficult. And so in that sense, I don't agree with Timothy that the archive solves the problem. I fully agree with Klaus that these rituals and this community rules, quote, quote, are a challenge. Andre?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think Timothy said that the archive alone solves all the problems. I don't think that's really what he said. He said in combination with things like the overlay journals. And so in this sense, this is still a journal, right? In the classical sense, there is an editorial board checking the quality, filtering content. And I think those are the main purposes of a journal. So I don't think the concept of a journal is to be going away, because there's just so much put on the archive, and a lot of stuff might be true, but you don't know. So I think having this level of quality assurance is really important. And the question now is, how do you scale this? And the discrete analysis journal is quite small, with 20 papers per year. And it just costs money to publish a journal in whatever form. A traditional publisher might not just only take a PDF as it comes from archive, but applies more to it. So there is, for example, for us, there are significant costs involved with typesetting, occasionally language editing, or just providing services to the authors and editors, like support or several tools, maintaining all the metadata that this is correct, depositing it, developing new formats or implementing new formats. All these costs made me change my mind from what Volker mentioned earlier. So back in the days when I was doing my PhD, I had the opinion that you just put it on the internet and it's done. But there is really a lot more than just putting it out there. And the quality assurance especially needs to happen in a very organized and systematic way. And yeah, so there are these costs, and the question now is, how do you cover these costs? And there are these several options that we have here also in the panel today. So we have Diamond open access publications, we have Subscribe to Open, we have traditional subscription journals, or journals that are funded through author fees, APCs. And so I'm not saying that the model that we are using now, Subscribe to Open, is solving the situation for everyone. So for us, this is the best solution, but others might prefer Diamond if they can, because you need to have someone sitting behind you funding the things. And I think Domo also raised this, that it can be quite hard to get the funding sustainably. So you have to adopt to the situation. And APCs might be best for others, but the problems that APCs have don't go away from this. So they can't be mitigated. APCs simply exclude people because you charge money. So that's an easy statement, I think.
Timothy?
Yeah, I think it's worth being a little bit thinking a little bit about what exactly the role of journals is. So, for example, with when it comes to papers that appear in annals, I would say that within the communities of the people who publish those papers, typically, if a paper is important enough to be in annals, by the time it actually appears in annals, it will have been read by a lot of people in the community, and its importance will be fully recognized. And the fact that it appears in annals is just a sort of little bonus, but doesn't really affect. When I think of the sort of the big news in my area, that people started celebrating these papers sort of within a week or two of their appearing on archive, and the fact that they later appeared in a very good journal was just, you know, it's not surprising, but it didn't change my one's perception of the papers. So I think when it comes to quality control, there are two principal functions it has. One is that we often find ourselves, if we're on hiring committees and that sort of thing, having to look at mathematicians who are not in our areas, and then we might sort of skim through their publication list and notice that they've got 2 papers in Inventiones and 1 in ACTA or something. I think, oh yes, that looks pretty good. And even if we can't judge, most people can't judge papers that are particularly far from what they do. I certainly can't. And also a related thing would be that if you're shortlisting for a position, then quite often you have to look through a lot of files in a short time. And again, I wish it could be otherwise, but it is just quite a quick process to look at someone's publication list and just see whether they've got any papers in some good journals. But when it comes to, once you've got to a short list, I think, at least in my experience, what what journals a paper has appeared in ceases to be important, and what really matters is the letters of reference that you read, and those can be written by people who are part of the community, and so therefore don't necessarily need to use the journal as some sort of proxy for quality. So I think the situation is a bit complicated, and although I agree that it's also not just complicated, but also very stable, so it's quite difficult to get to a different system. But I go back to what I said earlier on, that I think if one were devising a new system from scratch, given the existence of archive, given the existence of the internet in general, it would probably be a somewhat different system, and a more efficient one and a cheaper one. But it's very difficult to sort of move everyone over to a new system. So that is, okay, so that's what I'll say for the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Timothy. Giovanni, you're next.
Yes, Sergey, because I already talked enough. So maybe Sergey was about to say, so giving space.
Okay, Sergey, go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank the organizers for a very interesting discussion. I just want to make a couple of points which have been already mentioned. So one is that the quality of the journal is important, or the citation index, or some numeric characteristics. Unfortunately, and that is for convenience probably, people look at those characteristics when making important decisions, in particular when hiring or promotion, and that happens all the time. And it's not only when people compare one mathematician to another, say when hiring to a particular position, but also that happens when university administration compares a mathematician with a biologist or physicist or whoever else, and that all they can do probably is to look at citation indices. So I think the problem is even even if mathematics publishing would decouple from other publishing, as Timothy says, we also should decouple mathematics departments from other departments, and that I think is even more difficult to achieve. So that is what I want to say. I think it's indeed a problem. Part of it can be solved by people in hiring committees, and I think that they should look at the papers themselves, not at where they are published or not published, but that solves some of the first, it is not happening at smaller departments, and second, even that would not be sufficient, especially as far as I know, that is a bigger problem in Europe than, say, in the United States. I mean, I have seen examples of that in Europe when people wanted to be published because they are competing with a biologist for a position. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sergey. Giovanni?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing up this issue about shortlisting and like competition between mathematicians and other people. Like, I mean, this is something that as a publisher I'm not used to consider. So like, it's interesting to listen to this, looking at things from that side of the fence, no? But in terms of archive, there are two considerations I'd like to make. The first one is about archive. I think, yes, I mean, it's quite a deregulated space. I understand that like opinion changes about archive, but like, of course, the thing is that it exists. So like one should wonder, okay, how do I integrate this source with the articles that I'm able to publish? So like, how do I make sure that this culture that there is about publishing an archive is integrated in the workflow of our journals? Because so it's just like creating the resources in order to, as Xavier we're doing this, but like all serious publishers do this, that basically you're able to publish, submit your paper into a journal via archive using the archive code. So like this is something that we did in the attempt to integrate this practice. That being said, you know, like I also think that it's interesting to look at archive because one of the culture of journal publishing, as been said today, is also very stable while changing. It's also a matter of how gradually you want to make it change. And so like the only way that I feel as a publisher to make this change possible is integrating new article types, devising new ways of integrating bits of information that could be disseminated on its own. So these are the effort that the publisher like need to put money on, actually, to basically make sure that these new article types, new forms of dissemination are integrating with a more traditional one. This is a big challenge because, and this goes into my second assumption, and the second consideration that I wanted to make, the assumption that like if the internet was started early on, we would be in a different position. It is an interesting one, but I also fear that this might lead to a sort of like historicist problem. Because like we don't know also in the future, in 5-10 years, what technologies are going to be there and how this will affect the way we will be talking about publishing in 10 years from now. So this is another consideration we need to make also because like we don't know also what these technologies, what kind of resources or funding or policies will require, what kind of conversations they will open. So that's why I think, yeah, like it's an age of counterexamples because the experimentation that comes with open access is certainly fascinating and, you know, like, and has like different questions that needs to be answered and while keeping a traditional way of publishing. So author choice, again, to come back to my original point, is key here because this is the only thing that will be certain, like also in the future, what authors want to do. And the publisher need to make those resources available, whatever technologies there might be in the future. And there's going to be very much, and the acceleration is faster and faster. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thierry?
Well, Well, I wanted to say that I like journals, but maybe it shows my age because they reduce the entropy of the system. I mean, one of the main functions of journals for me is that they produce the version of a record, and you don't have the 10 versions you can find on the archive, and you don't know which one was cited and which one was used in this paper, etc. And you have a citation and a dependence, which is more important, graph, which can be with a very strange topology. So I think it's very useful for that. And then for the evaluation, of course, it reduces also the system because you have your own hierarchy of journals, and you follow some paths because you know that you trust this journal, or for this kind of thing, you think the referring is well done, etc. So personally, I think this is the main function, that you have the wide world of what is on the archive or other repositories, and you have just single out points which remain fixed, and you can trust, you can cite, you can depend on them. Even if they are proven wrong, then you should have the errata, agenda, etc. And this network is much smaller and makes the work much easier, especially for non-specialists, because mathematics is a basic science and results are used outside of the specialists. I think that there is the discourse of high specialists who are just happy with the archive, or even preprint they get through mail by colleagues, etc. And there are people that need to have some kind of stable knowledge basis on which to build, and which are not necessarily specialists, and journals and libraries are the killer application for that, in my opinion. Then the other thing I wanted to say is you can imagine a completely different, and people really believe in that, system where everything is open, and you have some kind of social scoring, or there is a way to get the function of that journals do, that if you have an important paper written in a given subject, then you can single it out using other ways than knowing that it is published in such journal through scoring. But I don't know, I am not aware of any working system or even prototype that would be credible to currently. I don't know if others have ideas in this respect. I think it's interesting. It's like we rely on posterity for knowing results from the past, which are the good authors, etc. And we could accelerate posterity using maybe internet technology, but I don't know how it would work. And just the other point I wanted to say about quality is that in Diamond Open Access, so we need something to regulate what is published, what is, and to have a way to compare trustability or the correctness of different results, etc. And so currently the reputation of journals does this. And if we go to, in the case of Diamond Open Access, well, what I wanted to say is that to some extent, the person who provides the money bears some responsibility. And in the case of APCs, it's just the author, so it's not new actor in the system that provides a kind of regulation what will be published or not. It's just the author's money that, so it goes in the wrong direction. If in Diamond Open Access, well done, there should be an institution or something that is that has strong scientific interest somewhere, which takes the responsibility for the publication, for the journal. For instance, we have the journal, the L'École Polytechnique, or other journals which bear names of institutions, and the institution is involved, and in fact, is supposed to cover the costs because it's Diamond Open Access. And so I think it's a good way to do that. But of course, it cannot be a solution for societies who used to get money from publication and who have no funds to just finance the publication. So that's more a conjecture what we can do in this case. But I think a lot of case, I mean, institutions currently pay subscriptions or a lot of stupid money, and they can just revert that to supporting well-done journals. And I think that could be a way that can help change the system and evolve in the right way. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to throw one little point into the discussion that maybe has not been addressed. So maybe Klaus said it indirectly. So we are a community, and actually the mathematics community is pretty well organized and pretty well together, despite our sometimes different opinions about what is good or bad, or what is the best mathematics or not. So in a certain sense, the quality assurance and the way publishing is done, we probably can find a way as community to do this. And also, the amount of money in math is not as big as the amount of money in bio or medicine for publishing. And that also may make it possible that new models can be achieved in mathematics separately from other fields. But I just wanted to throw this point in as maybe a discussion point. Tomo, you were next.
Well, I would just like to make a point on quality assurance, because I think that it should somehow be, when you are hiring somebody, or if there is a promotion or something like that, or award or whatever, there should be a balance of human, let's say, assessment, and also some objective, rules that could be applied to that. And these objective rules, I mean, should be, they can be used as when you look at the, let's say, MathSciNet or ZBMath. And I believe that having ZBMath open now, that's very, very important, because now, if you have to pay for something, then the rich countries, the rich mathematicians are benefiting twice against poor mathematicians, because poor mathematicians cannot have free access, cannot get access to such things. That's why it's important to have diamond open access and also to have ZBMath open.
Thank you. Andre?
Yeah, just touching on what Thierry said about going diamond with journals. I wanted to share some experience that we have with journals that came to us and basically asked us, look, we want to publish with you. And they said, we want to do this in a diamond open access way. We have some funding here, and so we give you that funding, and you publish a diamond open access. Of course, that's something that a publisher can do, and the amounts that are brought to the table may be substantial. However, they will be used up at a certain point, and this diamond open access publishing might be not the most sustainable way. So that's what we also told those editors and journals, that what happens in 10 years when this amount of money is consumed? What options do you have then? And going back to a subscription model doesn't really work then, because you basically lost all your subscribers, and you have to start from scratch. So you are starting with nothing and have to do everything again. So the only option that's left might be you charge APCs, and that's exactly what you wanted to avoid. So we think that for those journals, the subscribe to open path was a good decision. So it's in the sense, a bit of a smoother transition to open access the risk is lower for both the publishers and the editors, who are of course interested in a sustainable journal. The only risk, that I have to be blunt about this, is of these oscillations, like with polynomial interpolation. If you allow subscribers to drop out too easily, then it might flip back to non-open access. And that's the problem that we want to avoid with Subscribe to Open. We want to make sure that everyone really understands what the model is about, and that libraries keep subscribing, so that we don't have these oscillations from open access to non-open access and back and forth. That's just something I wanted to share in response to Thierry.
Yeah. Sergey?
Just a second. Yeah, I just want to comment on what Andre said. The American Mathematical Society launched an open and Diamond Open Access journal. I think it will start publishing papers sometime this fall. And the way we did it is that we have been able to obtain funding actually in the form of endowment. So unless something drastic happens, I don't know, to financial markets or something like that, we will be able to continue that model more or less in perpetuity, or until maybe publishing would become obsolete whatsoever. It would be head-to-head direct communication. But I think this is something that really makes Diamond Open Access, where neither the authors nor the users pay, the only sustainable model. There should be money there to support the journal, regardless of what the government wants, whether the donation expires or things like that. So we will see how it goes, but I think we are very enthusiastic about that. It will be, you may kind of look it up, and we hope it will be a model that people may, if they have donors like that, may follow.
Yeah, I think, Sergey, that's a very interesting point that you're making. There's a slight difference between Europe and the US in this respect. Endowments are not such a big thing in Europe, but
well, yeah, but you have governments instead.
Okay, so Giovanni?
Yes. So just wanted to touch about this idea of sustainability, and also what you, Volker, just said about we have to think about different models and what is actually viable. So there is a question of sustainability, feasibility. So what is easy for libraries to do? Subscribe to Open or transformational agreements are easy ways, in the sense that librarians don't have to change much. I feel that also Subscribe to Open is very interesting. However, like as Andrea was mentioning, there is a risk that the assumption that people will basically subscribe to have free content, and have all these free riders, it's quite a risk there. So like it will be interesting to understand and see how this will be tackled in the coming future. Because like, yes, you don't want to go back to basically a paywall, because there is not going to be enough subscriber to support this Subscribe to Open structure. So it is an interesting model, but it presents some problems that can be on the sustainability side. They're feasible, like it's easy to change to them. Librarians don't have to do anything, but like to face every year you know, they to be recast.
The last sentences you
there
said,
are also like transformative
Giovanni?
agreements, which I think also answer to
the last sentences you said were cut.
this question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were cut for a while. Can you?
Oh, sorry.
The last sentences.
Yes. So basically, it's transformative agreements. I think they also answer to these differences in geographies. So there are places where like open access is not funded. There are countries in the world where open access is not funded, but they still want to have, you know, they could negotiate subscription at like certain contractual prices that are relative to their economies. Or, but there are countries in which there are mandates and commitments, such as Coalition S, you know, like which are commitments the institutions are, they want to join or they want to subscribe. So like, how do you do this? I feel that transformative agreements, they give the options, you know, like for those people that want to have their content immediately turned into open access while publishing on what is considered a traditional journal. Like LAA, for instance, of which Volker is one of the editors-in-chief, you know, it still allows that to do, you know, so I think it's also like what is viable like in different geographies. This is something to be considered like carefully because there is not one policy for a variety of countries. There are different things going on at the same time. And like publishers need to make sure that the content is presented worldwide in the same way with the same quality at different kinds of customers. So this is a big question. Yeah.
Thank you. You want to add to this directly, Andre?
Yes. So regarding transformative agreements, I have two problems with transformative agreements. The first one is that it's a massive global patchwork of solutions that you have. I mean, anyone who ever tried to negotiate a consortia agreement knows how much work this is. And even the big publishers are struggling to find like transformative agreements in the sense of like deal, for example, like countrywide read and publish agreements. And doing this for all countries, for every single publisher, is just not viable. So this is not working. It's a patchwork solution, I think. And it's because it's a patchwork solution, it's still excluding authors from publishing in your journal if everyone else would have to pay APCs. That's point one. And point two is it's called transformative agreements, but honestly, I have no idea what these transformative agreements are transforming to. This is completely unclear to me. Also, for example, the deal thing that Springer Nature has is ending in 2024. And what's coming afterwards? Nobody knows. I don't know, and I don't think Springer Nature knows. So maybe, Giovanni, if you have any insights on this, that would be very interesting.
Olaf, do you mind if I answer this question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry for we're short on time. So, okay, I cannot speak for Springer because I'm Elsevier man. So like, so I cannot say anything great published, but I'm not in the position to speak of what they're doing. Transformative agreements, you're right in expressing confusion because that can be, so like I understand it. And I also want to mention quickly about this date, 2024, which is important not just for Springer, but also for us, because it relates to Coalition S and what it means for transformational journals, not transformative agreements. So there is a big confusion there in the vocabulary. Now, like Thomas Kuhn used to say, for every paradigm shift, there is going to be a new vocabulary. So like here we're going into philosophy of science, but it applies also to publishing. So there is a new way to express this new reality. So transformative agreement, what does it mean? It's basically all these these traditional journals. I mentioned LAA, linear algebra and its application before. But like it's a traditional journal that basically allows in those countries where these transformative agreements are signed, in Europe, almost, if you go to elsevier.com, you can see all the list of countries. It's a lot of them. Basically, authors that are parts of the affiliated to the institution of those countries can publish their paper immediately in open access. not it, but this is not gold open access. So it doesn't mean that those authors need to pay an APC. They will just submit their paper as usual, but the difference is that thanks to this transformational agreement, basically universities are paying a fee for APCs for all of the authors, and not just a fee to read, but a fee to publish. So this is the difference. The transformational journals, then, it's a different thing because it basically stands by the predicaments of coalition S, in which basically you're saying, okay, I'm labeling this journal a transformational journal, which means that by 2024, the journal will flip. So this is an interesting proposal, which we are subscribing, but there are questions there too, because what if, like in mathematics, so we're not talking about other disciplines, we're talking about mathematics. What if we make a transformational journal, not a journal in a transformational agreement, let's leave them on the side, but a transformational journal? What if the community cannot afford to support the flip? So what if there is not going to be enough money to pay for all the gold open access APCs that are needed? So this is another question which will be tackled in 2024 somehow. I'm not the person to do this. So if you have questions about this, write me in private. I will put you in contact with that person in Elsevier that does this kind of things. But I'm not the one. But transformational agreements is basically a traditional journal that are part of this deal. And the authors can still decide to publish in these journals without having to pay an APC. However, the paper will be open access immediately. Is it a patchwork solution, like Andre says? Yes.
And it's not a solution that is accepted by many funding agencies.
Yes.
Hybrid journals which have both will not be accepted. I mean, I see Frank Kiefer here from DFG and also in ERC and others. So that may be a problem. But I would give Olaf the word.
That's true. Yeah.
Actually, so most of this has already been mentioned. I just want to stress once more that indeed sustainability is a big question. So one option is flipping into APCs, which I personally and probably many mathematicians see as a problem. For diamond open access, I can only encourage especially Europeans to do the hard way to try to get government funds. That was the way we succeeded. That was a long way, maybe 4 or 5 years for CBMS open, and it's also still a difficult, but I think feasible situation because it depends on a 7-year evaluation. So we have to prove regularly that we are good enough to receive the governmental funds, which is fair, I think, because everyone should do this. And this is a way, at least in Europe, I think we can facilitate open access. And I think also what Andre sketched, the way of subscribe to open is not just feasible, but also it's quite practical, because also in the way of subscribe to open, in the subscribe to open model, you will really have to prove that you are good, that you are doing beneficial work for the community, and it regulates it also in a quite practical way. I think it's a quite pragmatic approach to open access, and that may be quite successful. The only doubt I will have with the sustainability of subscribe to open that you should charge some epsilon plus, because the budgets of the libraries are cyclic, and it's very difficult in a subscribe to open model to weather somehow the down cycles, and I think that will be also quite challenging. Thank you.
I see Thierry, and Thierry is always the first to speak, so I think we have to sum up. It was reserved for 1.5 hours, and I think we could go on for a long time. So maybe I would give a final word to every panelist and maybe put a vision on the table where we should go and what the community should do. Thierry?
Well, I just wanted to say something about sustainability. I think it's something that we talk about just for inhibiting innovation or experimentation, because the current system is not sustainable at all. Because subscriptions rise at a much higher rate than inflation, for instance, and library budgets fall down and or are cycling. Government support, we cannot tell in 5 years what it will be, etc. And populist governments just get research funds. And so I think we should just still go on. And there are lots of interesting things to do. And well, and I think we should do them and not care so much. Of course, when you do something, you have to think how it will be in 10 years. And but if it's good and the community buys it, then this is the main thing that will sustain it. That's it.
Thank you. Andre?
Yeah, so I mean, there was quite a lot. So summarizing, I would say that it's not only about sustainability, but it's about sustainability. That's the one axis, and the other axis is fairness. And I think we have to evaluate all models on both axes and see where they are. Some are slightly distorted towards sustainability. Others are geared towards fairness. And so I hope that everyone knows a bit now about subscribe to open, and I think this is good on both axes, but time will tell, of course. So we'll see. We know the risks, and we're trying to mitigate them, of course. But yeah, so I think any future publishing model should bear in mind both sustainability and fairness, and that's all from me.
Sorry, if I may. Just one thing about, I think it's not publishers' work to take care of preservation and long-term preservation of the corpus they publish. It's the library job, and it should be done by government or public institutions like university libraries, consortia, etc. And publishers should, the fact that publishers just go bankrupt is not so much of a problem as long as there is a good library system.
Yeah, but that's a French point of view. I don't think every country subscribes to that. Timothy, you want to add something?
I don't have very much to add. It's clear that there are a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, things that are unsatisfactory about the current system. I suppose my main point would be that I think it's, even though change is very difficult, I think it's good to start a little bit from first principles and try to think what exactly it is we want from publication. Yeah. And I think the answers are not necessarily just a small change to what we have at the moment.
Klaus?
I would like to advertise a point of view that says that publications should be seen as part of a bigger ecosystem, namely open data. So publication is one thing. We can and should link with community platforms that can also help solve quality assessment, that can deal perhaps with the question of reputation. There are other things how mathematics is disseminated, video slides, etc. Can we somehow make that part of our system of dissemination of information about mathematics? And there's the whole world of research data. I mean, research data are produced, they are part of mathematics. We have to store them, we have to deal with them, we have to handle them. And that, of course, also has something to do with a long-term storage of publications and of data. So that's sort of the message I want to say is we should start thinking in sort of this this bigger world of open data. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Tomo?
As I said at the beginning, I think that the ultimate goal should be diamond open access. I don't know how to achieve it. We did it already, but we will adapt to any kind of solutions that the big players will impose on us. So that's all I can tell.
Thank you. Giovanni?
Yes, I think resonates with me the message about fairness and sustainability. I think that more, I mean, in view of try to understand also like how to serve the community better, these kind of occasions like we're having today should be happening more often. Maybe, and I'm throwing it out there, maybe there should be also like more dialogue among publishers into like publishing important or like publishing journals in mathematics. There should be more contact also to understand, besides the usual financial competition and things and market share, all of these things, but in terms of like thinking about the community and thinking how to answer the questions that are coming from the bottom. And I think that there we should be coming together in a more formal way, just to like leaving behind the discussion on market share. I mean, so I know that coming from an Elsevier voice, this might be sounding, oh my God, Elsevier man doesn't think about market share, nothing about that. But I'm really concerned for the future of the quality of publications in mathematics because of the nature of its community, because of the culture of its community, and the way and how strong it is together, that we as commercial or non-commercial publishers should be talking more, trying to understand how we should serve these demands. Maybe an exchange for later, but I hope we will be, I hope we can work towards this actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Olaf, you want to, I don't know whether you're still here. I think he's not. Anyway, so I think we've unfortunately used up our time. I think it was a really very good discussion, but I only see it as a starting point. And as Giovanni just said, I think going back to what our goals are as a mathematical community and what we want to achieve, at the moment I see a big transformation. I see a transformation in the mathematical community. I see a transformation in the way data are handled. And I also see a big transformation happening in the way mathematical results are published and stored and kept for the future. And I personally think that the European Mathematical Society and maybe also the American Mathematical Society and other major societies that are publishing should lead this discussion together and try to find a way, as Giovanni said, putting the commercial side a little bit on the side, but looking at what is important for mathematics and how we can deal with the culture that has established itself and how we can deal with the future, which is coming much faster than we think. So thank you very much to all of you for the discussion, and I hope that we can arrange something similar, and I may take what was discussed here and write a little summary about it, and also put this on the agenda, and maybe we can organize some kind of more brainstorming and so vision shaping direction in the future of publishing, in particular in mathematics. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Very interesting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.